Here we are with this flooded out 56 Tremolux. Clean it up, it works. I gotta put the camera down, but you'll hear a tone.
This is my all-original 1958 Stratocaster. I'm gonna restring it right now with GHS nickel rockers, and then we'll start out plugging into the Woodrow. Then I'm gonna plug this guitar into my 1955 Tweed Tremolux. Tweed Deluxe would have had a cathodiene phase inverter, Tremolux had a paraphase phase inverter, but they'd both be in the same ballpark and running a 6v6 output stage. Middle pickup on the 58 Strat, Woodrow volume 3 into the normal channel. Tone controls on the Strat are all the way up, as is the volume on the Strat. The tone control on the Woodrow is on 7. .121 pointed pretty dead center on the speaker. There will be no boost applied on the plug-in, and I've disabled the EP3 preamp. I'm not interested in any of that. Let's just hear amp for amp, nothing else. For the plug-in, the Strat's plugged straight into Apollo on the high Z input, and for the vintage amp, I plug straight in to the stock Apollo mic pre, with absolutely nothing else added, except there may be a slight touch of reverb in post. That's it. The instrument channel goes through a bright cap, which at lower volume settings will send more high-end onto the rest of the circuit. The microphone channel doesn't have that cap, but in certain cases I find that the microphone channel is more creamy sounding. Last, the ideal way to do this, of course, is to run a splitter, one into the plug-in, one out to the amplifier, so you eliminate the variable of different performances. I wasn't going to go buy more gear to make this video. I'm going to set that plug-in using the Greenback speaker emulation, the GB25. And the reason I'm going to do that is so we're comparing apples to apples, somewhat, because my amp has an Eminence private jack in it. I went through a bunch of them with Todd Sharp after the flood. He saved that amp, he restored that amp. I've still got the Jensen, but it needs to be reconed. Make of it what you will. I just want to be really honest about the circumstances, the settings, and how we're conducting this experiment. Of course, the old amps, the original schematics, Leo called for a 12A-Y7 in the first stage. Lower amplification factor to a 12AY7 as opposed to a 12AX7. I'm curious how the amplifiers they're modeling over there have been serviced. Certainly a 12AX7 in the first stage would cause a little more breakup sooner. When I got the amplifier, T. Warren, the amplifier tech in Seattle, who was a quite animated character, said, "Don't come back to me and tell me you want it to sound as good as it does on every volume as it does on one specific volume. These great amps have a sweet spot." Here's the 121 and 57 together, capsules aligned. Still nothing's changed on the amp. Microphone channel of the Woodrow, volume on 3. And here's vintage Tweed. I can fix them when something goes wrong. Stick around to the end. Maybe this is a teachable moment. Back on the Woodrow, tone on 7, volume up to 7. Everything else is the same on the plug-in, just switched over to the microphone channel. And I am back in the instrument channel on the Woodrow with that all the way up to 10. Sorry, Lupe wins. I'm looking for width and support and feeling like I'm sinking into the note, which is part of the feel. And like if I were to switch to the bridge pickup, it's darker, but it's also not as broken up. We're back on the middle pickup. But that's one of the things to me about Tweed amps. I like it when the third string almost sounds like it's a wound string, where it's just so fat it's wrapping the note right around you. And there is something to be said for the mojo of old amps with drifted values. Let's go back to the Woodrow and plug into the microphone channel on that. And here's the mic channel on the amp. Now, how do I know exactly what needs to be repaired on this amplifier? It just makes me feel so much more liberated and free and unencumbered by anxiety, knowing that if anything goes wrong with these, I can take care of it. And the cost of parts feels so much more fun, and I'm only speaking for myself personally, than if I had to go, crap, my pedal just died. I guess I'll just shell out the money and buy a replacement. Or I've got to send this thing off to Universal Audio and wait. The best troubleshooting tool of all is your mind. So first off, what was the amplifier doing? And the sound starts to get a little bit quieter and then a little quieter, and it starts to fade down and eventually perhaps fade out completely. So question one, does it do that on both channels, or does it only do it on one channel? Well, it only does it on the microphone channel. So looking at the schematic, we see the instrument channel and the microphone channel both share a tube. Odds are then that the tube is fine. So how does the guitar signal get from the input to the output? Well, it's plugged into the microphone channel. It's going to go in input 1, because that's what I was in. It's going to go into the grid of the 12AY7. Then it's going to go through the 0.1 microfarad coupling capacitor. Then it's going to go into the microphone channel volume pot. Then it's going to go on to the phase inverter. You wind up at the output tubes. You go through the primary, the output transformer, and then on to the speaker. And if the sound is getting quieter as you're playing through the amplifier and things are vibrating, is it possible perhaps that this connection here could be a little shoddy, a little bit loose, or have some corrosion, or the connection to ground is not ideal. In order to test that, you can take a resistance reading. If it is what I'm virtually certain it is, I'll carefully remove this chicken head knob. I'll carefully remove the nut holding the pot to the chassis, and then look for corrosion, possibly clean the surface, and put things back together, being careful not to strip anything or break any fragile vintage knobs. I don't need to be probing around a live tube amplifier at all for this. I've got the black meter probe connected to the ground lug on the pot, and now I take the red probe and I'm going to touch it to the ground connection on the other end of the guitar cable, or touching the other multimeter probe to the chassis itself. YouTube vocal coach Ken Tamplin says the proof is in the singing, and I gotta say the proof is in the resistance. I don't think we need a PhD in ohm meterology in order to realize that 58.6 ohms is not good enough. 0.6. We fixed it. I'm happy to report that the amp is fixed, but it's getting quite late here right now. It's not like you can restring a vintage Strat, repair a tube guitar amp, and do a gear demo all in one day. So what you heard should be enough for you to come to your own conclusions. But before we sign off, I found the footage of the amplifier with the original Jensen in it after we turned the amplifier on for the first time since the Nashville floods. And as soon as it sounded that good, it went over to Todd's garage. I'll see you again the next time.
Anyhow, I'm not going to push my luck. I don't want to blow up a speaker or anything. This needs to go in for service, but it's flabbergasting. It's astounding.